Good morning. I thought I'd come on and speak about the Aries-Libra axis within the astrology chart. Now, each of the zodiac signs, such as Aries and Libra, have an opposite sign within the chart. So with Aries, it's Libra, Taurus, it's Scorpio, Gemini, it's Sagittarius, Cancer, it's Capricorn, Leo, it's Aquarius, and then, of course, Virgo, it is Pisces. So each of these axes within the astrology chart bring together different energies that actually work together on one level. So as we work on one energy, we actually then also have to focus on the other. So it's about finding the balance between these two particular energies. Now, the Aries Libra axis is about me versus us together. So Aries is very much the axis of me, myself, the individual. It's about the initiator, the pioneer, what I do as an individual, how I go on a big adventure. And Libra is very different because Libra is about us in relationships, particularly personal relationships, but also how we share our energy, about our partnerships, balance, harmony, how we work together to make things happen. And these are two very different energies because obviously, we have a relationship with ourselves, but we also have a relationship with other people. And I suppose in our world, our aim is to always find a balance between those two particular energies that we live with. And also Libra is very much about how we maintain balance as well in understanding who we are and what we need in terms of this relationship axis. Um, so, so Aries asks us to really consciously look at who am I and who am I in this sense and what am I needing in this particular area and in this particular focus, which is relationships. And because when I come into relationships knowing who I am and what I want and what I need, I then can be in a better place to be in a relationship with you as the other party in that particular space. Now, when I come into that relationship, having really unclear boundaries, having a really unclear sense of myself or my own sense of self worth, then what I do is I surrender to you in that relationship. And sometimes that means that leads to a lot of self sacrifice and not always in a positive, healthy way. Some people are happy to do that. And sometimes that goes to an extreme where we end up in a martyr place. But sometimes it's not always positive as well because we can find ourselves lost in the other, so much so that we actually forget who we are before we actually started in relationships. And in relationships that work well, are relationships where two people come together, having an understanding, an idea of who they both are, particularly in this contemporary world where people are looking for relationships that are more soul based, that are more soul connected. In order to connect with somebody at a soul level, we need to know who we are and what we're doing. It doesn't mean we need to be perfect or we need to work through everything. That's not possible. That's called life. And sometimes relationships bring us into that focus within ourselves where we can actually start to look at ourselves and rebalance because relationships are teaching grounds for all of us and all sorts of relationships, whether it be with a partner, friends, children, other family members, work colleagues, etc. All of them bring something and a new form of learning to us. But ultimately, we are ourselves and our unique, authentic selves in relationships. And when we bring that unique, authentic self of who we are, and we find someone who accepts us and loves us for who we are in that particular process, then that's a really powerful place. Sometimes, particularly as women, we find ourselves sacrificing a lot in relationships, but I don't think it's only women these days who do that either. Men can equally do that too. But in sacrificing, sometimes we sacrifice so much of ourselves that we don't know who we are and we don't know what we are getting from that relationship. And it leads to burnout and martyrdom and a whole sense of unhealthy aspects of relationships where we then start to feel negative about the other person because, in a sense, we're not owning ourselves and what we needed to do in that relationship because it's never about the other person. It's about us doing our own personal work in relationships as well, which is really, really important. So we're needing to understand who we are in terms of our human experience, our life journey, what's really important, what triggers us, what actually helps us, what we're doing and how we deal with difficult experiences, how we cope and how we manage. And it gives us information about who we are in all relationships, and aspects of ourselves, especially when they're in that area space of really looking at ourselves and self-discovery. But Libra is about how we take our sense of ourself and how we meet other people. And this is how we need to understand our experiences, because when we need to meet other people that are different from us and have different thoughts, we need to think about how do we make space and how do we allow for that difference in our connections, because we can't all be the same. That's not going to be possible. But understanding and making the connections becomes really, really important. And it also becomes important in terms of how we resolve our differences, but also how we seek to find harmony with other people as well. And sometimes those individuals within relationships can actually be reflecting for us aspects of ourselves that perhaps are not in harmony as well. So when we look at those relationships, it could be somebody else showing us something about ourselves that maybe we're uncomfortable with or we're not liking, but maybe it's something we need to look at, as well. And maybe it's an aspect of ourselves that we're not owning in a sense. And so that person brings that to our attention, and then we need to focus on that and maybe think through how am I really dealing with that at this particular point in time. And so how we actually work through some of those differences, some of those problems sometimes, how we look for a win-win solution in terms of how in our relationships and how we solve things can actually be a real strength in our partnerships. And in working together with other people, makes us a lot stronger as well, because it helps us really understand that this is, how we can honor ourselves, but also how we honor other people as well. And so we needing to find space within ourselves to love and honor other people, but also be ourselves in those particular relationships as well. And it helps us feel a lot better when we can do this. I mean, none of us want to have conflict all the time. We look for harmony, we enjoy harmony, and it's actually makes our life flow a lot easier. But sometimes we need to almost assert ourselves and find ourselves so that we're not so lost in harmony that we actually haven't lost who we are, as well. And it's important for us to build those skills and build those muscles, as well. So sometimes when this emphasis in Libra becomes really strong and we become so focused on our relationships, we can become codependent, and that's not always healthy either for us, because in a sense we're so wanting to make peace or make other people happy at all costs that that's not a positive thing, and that becomes a very unbalanced relationships, and eventually it becomes a very unhealthy relationship, and it can lead to frustration for both parties, because in a sense the other party can actually feel like you're giving away so much of yourself that you're not being unique, authentic, you're not being real, and they actually wonder who they're in relationship with. But also you have to wonder in a relationship where someone wants to give you to give so much of yourself away, they want to have so much power and control over you, how healthy that is for you in the long term. It might give them great sense of satisfaction or achievement, but perhaps that need to control and have power over other people is an issue within their own psyche they need to address and deal with. Because in a balanced relationship, we don't need to necessarily always be in control and have our power over other people. We can be in a balanced place, which is really, really important for both parties as well. We also need to have a sense, within Libra of that balance and that healthiness, and it's important to have a sense of, how will I support and accommodate you and relate to you. But also, what is it that I need to maintain myself in that relationship too? That's where Aries energy becomes very important, because when we can assert ourselves in our relationships, we also start to get our needs met, and we teach people how we want to be treated. But we also then teach people how they then what they can then expect from us. Because if I'm in a relationship and I'm saying to someone, this is what I need, I'm also hoping that I'm teaching and helping them be in a space where they can then talk to me about what they need as well. So it becomes a mutually beneficial, mutually loving, mutually collaborative partnership, which is what a lot of us are looking for. We're looking at very much those sorts of more collaborative partnerships in our lives, absolutely. But it's also important for us to find a sense of ourselves so that we're not totally giving away all of our power, trying to make a relationship work, making other people happy, being able to, having to try and save everything at all costs, because that's actually not helpful at all. And it's not a good place to be working from. And at the same time, we don't want to be ending up in a place where we become so frustrated that we start to blame, create drama, and make things into a bigger mess because we're not happy within ourselves. And we have to actually be able to have that very mature Libra energy, which steps back and healthy and says, looks at things and says, what am I feeling? How am I feeling this? What's going on here for me? And also can then listen to and hear the other person in relationship, but isn't having to need to give away so much of themselves that they can't stand in their own space as well. because maybe there are some important things that we need to say within ourselves. So it's also Libra energy is understanding what you need in relationships, and that's healthy. Looking at what you need, how you need to have those things, what you need to make you feel loved, because Venus rules Libra. So helping you feel loved and feel wanted and admired and valued and all those things in relationships becomes really, really important. And also importantly with Aries, that other part of that axis, also understanding how you connect to your sense of self, and what I need, and being really truthful and honest about that in relationships too. And so being able to bring that to the table and be truthful about your needs. And also, it can, but at the same time not being in that sort of lower vibe of Aries energy that's demanding and basically wanting to always have the attention. And is also almost like a small child throwing tantrums and having fits, which is not helpful, and not making your relationship into a battlefield as well, because sometimes that Aries energy can be very aggressive as well, because it wants to get what it wants to get. It wants to lead, it wants to be warrior, it wants to feel move forward, but at the same time we need to do that in a more collaborative way, and that's the balance that we always seek to strive for when we look at this particular part of our, this particular focus in our chart, that Aries Libra focus as well. And at the same time, allowing ourselves to be heard, but not shouting over the other person, so that they can also be heard, and so we can both voice our concerns and our needs and our wants and desires in that particular relationships, which is really, really important. And as we do that, and as we mature and become more responsible and more aligned within ourselves, then we can meet each other in a more loving and harmonious and beneficial relationship. And we move beyond you and me. We need to move beyond into a partnership and a relationship. We're actually co-creating together, and we can co-create something quite important. And in this time, there are many of us seeking soul connections with other people. They don't all have to be romantic, but we're looking to go beyond that as spiritual people, and we're looking at areas and relationships and people we can co-create with. And that requires us to be in an equitable, fair, honest, and loving relationships where we can still be our honest, unique, authentic selves. In that sense, that's actually very, very powerful. And it's also really important because, in a sense, we when we have that Libra energy, we're also asking, what do I need to be supported? Because it's really, really key. How can I do that? And when we are in that Aries energy of being independent and strong within ourselves, we can then show up and support the other party as well. But we don't do that from a place of codependence or negativity or neediness. We do that from a place of strength. So if I'm having a bad day and my significant other comes to me and says, what can I do to help? That becomes a real source of strength in that relationship, because in that place, we're also able to be vulnerable, which is important in any relationship if we want it to grow and develop and evolve as such. So that's very, very important as well. And this works, in a sense, in the long term, because we then start to take some responsibility for our own sense of happiness. So when I'm in a relationship and I'm in that Aries focus, I know who I am. I can take responsibility for telling the other party what makes me happy, what I can do. But I can also take responsibility to do some things for myself, because it's not always about the other bringing those things into focus. It's not always about the other person giving me things. It's about us coming together and actually giving to each other, but also having given to ourselves first. So it's almost like you drink from the well first yourself in order to then be able to help other people drink from that well as well. It's the same when you're on a plane. You basically have to put your own life jacket on before you can actually help other people jump out of the plane. So it's very, very similar in that sense, but very, very important. And so we actually start to then move from a sense of sovereignty within ourselves. And so the energy becomes a lot more dynamic, and there's a lot more flow between us, because we're dealing with each other as mature individuals rather than as needy individuals looking for one party in the Aries energy looking to assert themselves, telling you what I need, tantruming, and the other party being super codependent and saying I'm just needy. So we come together having come into ourselves and then being able to share that with other people, which is very, very powerful as well. So this becomes particularly important because the North Node and the South Node will go into this Aries Libra axis from July. I think it's from July 18th, actually. Yeah, it's from July 18th of this year. And it'll sit there until January 2025. So it's there for about 18 months. So if you have any planets or any significant aspects in that Aries-Libra areas, then it could actually be hitting those things as well. So it will start to trigger other things. So again, when we're looking at that in terms of the nodes of fate, looking at the North Node, in Aries, this is what's leading us forward. Being in our own unique sovereignty, figuring out who I am, being an individual, moving forward, taking steps, being brave, being courageous, all of those things. But what I then need to deal with is I then need to deal with the South Node in Libra, and that means that I need to deal with any baggage I've got from past relationships. I need to deal with where I gave myself away in relationships. I need to be in a space where there's more balance in my relationships. There could have been relationships where I sacrificed everything and was a martyr in my relationships. It could have even happened in my childhood where that was something that I was told or something that I was conditioned to believe is the way I needed to be, and some of that can be related to gender or culture or family position or a whole range of things where I actually gave that away. And I now need to step into more of myself, into more of who I am, so I can authentically be the leader in my own life. Because when I'm leading in my own life, then I can co-create something amazing with someone else. But when I'm still not sure who I am and where I am and what I am, then I don't know what I'm not 100% sure what I can bring to the table as such. At least not with someone else who's moving in the same direction and at the same vibration as myself. And as I move into a relationship, that's what I particularly want. So I want to be in relationship with someone who is moving in that same vibration, in that same way. Someone who is able to be their own unique, authentic self and allow me to be my own unique, authentic self. But when we come together, we co-create and bring things together and have some really healthy relationships and healthy dynamics. But also so we can learn and grow together as well. Because as I said, relationships can help us learn and grow, really bring things forward in an amazing way, and actually really take us into a deep journey within our hearts, as well as other parts of ourselves as well. But in that loving relationship space, that is all about heart energy, and it really encourages us to move forward in a different way and actually learn to grow and expand and develop our hearts in a really powerful way. It's not the only way, because your heart won't necessarily grow and expand and develop if you haven't learnt to self-love in the first place. Because if you don't have that energy, then you're coming into those relationships always being a bit needy, a bit empty, and you're always looking to other people to validate and give you what you're missing. But when you come together full in that space of self-love, self-worth, self-value, you are strong in your Aries energy, authentic, unique, strong, powerful sense of self, courageously leading your own life, then you can courageously step into other relationships with other people and find harmony because you stand strong in yourself, and therefore you don't need to have power and control over other people, because people can be who they can be because you're strong enough that you don't need other people to give you anything, but you don't also need to give all of yourself over as well to make things work. So this becomes particularly powerful, as I said, as the North Node moves into Aries on July 8th, 2023, and will be there until January 2025. So we have 18 months of this energy. So it's an interesting and powerful time. So I hope this has helped you. Just some words of thought. So have a nice day. Goodbye for now.